According to Harvard Medical School instructor and lecturer Dr. Craig Malkin, it can be important to note that the self-important behavior commonly associated with narcissism is most often used as a way to mask incredibly low self-esteem. Covert signs of low self-esteem may present in the form of making you feel uncertain or unsure of yourself. However, I've learned through therapy that everything in life is a mirror. So somebody with a high self-esteem would never settle for that type of behavior. So now looking back at the situation, even before marriage, the girl that you were when you were dating him, can you see how you had low self-esteem, which is why you accepted that type of treatment?
Oh yeah, I can.
Delulu besties, welcome. This is a safe space to vent, talk shit, reflect, and most importantly, keep it real. It's better to trauma dump here so that we don't explode on innocent randos. Just admit it. You're bothered. What's up, Delulu besties? Welcome back to another episode of Balancing the Bullshit. Hello, Mother.
Hello.
Are you excited to be here?
I am. This is an opportunity. Something I have not done before.
Are you ready to talk about your narcissistic ex-husband?
I guess. As ready as I will be, for sure.
It's going to be great. Okay, first we're going to play a little get to know you game so our Delulu besties can get to know you.
Okay, go for it.
What's your favorite food?
Probably an arugula salad with olive oil. Oh, yummy.
Oh, yeah.
Yummy, yummy. In my tummy.
David's obsessed with your enchiladas. He brings them up all the time. He's like, when's your mom going to make them again? What's your latest guilty pleasure?
Ooh, dark chocolate.
No, your latest guilty pleasure is calling customer service and watching Netflix. Wrong answer.
No. Dark chocolate it is.
Do you have any pet peeves?
Oh, yes. Mainly around how things should be placed around the house and clean stuff, that kind of thing. Yes.
Y'all, poor Daniel, my mom's husband, she just gives him chores to do all day long, and he's like, oh my god, I'd be so happy to do it, and then he like never does it.
Whatever.
What does a perfect day look like?
Well, it looks like waking up, starting with things I'm grateful for, morning coffee, home cooked meal, my peeps.
So nothing pretty much your life now. Retirement.
AKA being retired correctly.
Nice.
You got it.
It's funny growing up because I used to think it was like, oh, when I make all this money and when I have this job. But it really is the simple things like not being around people, waking up in my own home with my dog, drinking coffee, no one bother me.
Yeah, you know, sitting in the dining room with my morning coffee, looking out at the greenery, that kind of starts me off in a good mood.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite childhood memory?
Lots, but one of my favorites that I think often is probably when I was maybe about 5 or 6. We used to go on family picnics all the time.
Aww.
And there's this one picnic that for some reason sticks in my mind. We went to this little valley area, and there was a little stream, cold water, and there were rocks. And I remember, I don't know if you've ever seen them, but way back in the old day, they used to sell sodas in a 24 wooden case. And so with all the kids that there was, we'd have one of those or one or two of those for the family picnics, and we'd get to that place, and my brothers would find a rock to put the case so that the water would run through it and keep the sodas cold.
Aw, that's a cute memory.
It is. And then they would be playing soccer, and I remember very clearly sitting on another soccer ball and kind of just, watching them play. It was a lot of fun.
Did all 13 kids go?
Oh, yeah.
That's wild.
It was.
Y'all, my mom grew up with 12 brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Can you imagine going on a picnic with that many siblings?
Yes.
So crazy.
Oh, let me tell you that getting ready for the picnic was part of the memory in itself, because we had this long kitchen counter, and we'd bring tortas for the picnic, and it was like factory setup, you know, an assembly line. Somebody would go down the line and cut all the bread, and then somebody would come behind you and put the mayo, and somebody behind you and put all the fixings, kind of like that, and then somebody would wrap them up.
I'm impressed that grandma got all 13 kids to get ready.
Yeah.
I think it would take me all day to dress 13 kids.
Oh no, the older kids take care of themselves and help with the little ones, for sure.
Yeah.
And then my grandma used to live with us also, so yeah, that was very helpful.
Wow. Do you ever feel lonely? Be honest.
Define lonely, because I do like being alone. I can't see myself living by myself 24/7, 365 days out of the year. I don't think I would enjoy that. But I do like my times to myself. But then just a little while, and then I gotta see people, talk to somebody, do something different. I couldn't be by myself all the time.
See, I actually realized I'm the opposite of what you would think. Well, before the pandemic, I was hardly ever at home. I was always with people. And so even though I was always with people, I didn't realize at the time that I actually felt really lonely in this world in general. So it doesn't matter if you're around people or if you live alone, you could still feel lonely at the end of the day. Just is a matter of whether you've taken the time to sit with yourself and realize it. So then during the pandemic, when we were forced to sit with ourselves, that's when I realized, oh, I'm actually really uncomfortable with who I am. And that doesn't change when you're around people.
Yeah, that's why I kind of said define lonely.
Yeah, I guess it just depends how you perceive it. Like when I read the question, I guess I associated loneliness with being uncomfortable with myself, because that's when I felt lonely in the world. What's the most difficult lesson you learned from your last relationship?
Ooh, lots of things, but probably the most difficult one was to really stand up for myself. Not because I didn't see what needed to be said or needed to be done. And I don't know if it was part of my upbringing or me not being comfortable enough with myself to not care and say, you know what, this is not okay. The way that I thought I should be was like, I need to be patient and let people grow and realize on their own that what they're doing is not okay. But there's times when you do have to say out loud, you know what? This is not okay. Yeah. And I really learned that, because that in part because I never did it, and in part because I thought, well, you know, they'll come around, they'll realize it. But it came a point in time when it was like, you know what? No, I've been patient enough. This is definitely not okay, and I am not going for it. And I had to say it out loud.
What did you learn from that after you realized, like, oh, this is what happens when I stand up for my values and what I believe in?
Well, I mean, it's hard in a sense, because it's kind of like stepping out of your comfort zone, even if it was uncomfortable comfort zone. But it's easier to go along with what you've been doing for X amount of time than say, you know what, I got to change this. And then stepping out of that relationship was hard, because then it brings changes that you really don't look forward to in the short run. In the long run, I mean, yeah, it was good. It was a good thing. I'm so glad I did what I did. But in the short run, it was hard.
That's what I say in my manifesting course. It's so funny when people are like, oh, I want a change in my life, or I want this thing. In order for that to happen, your life has to change. It sounds nice, but then when it comes down to actually doing the work to change it, then people are like, never mind. So like, what would you rather just stay trapped in your miserable situation. Like, you have to let go. Okay, you guys, now we are moving on to my mother's ex-husband, who is a narcissist, aka her baby daddy, aka, I guess, technically my father. So first, we're going to go through symptoms of a narcissistic personality disorder, so you guys can get to know what her baby daddy was like. And then also, in case anybody listening, if they're in a situation with a narcissistic person, maybe this will help you identify it and just get to understand better. So one thing is an unreasonably high sense of self-importance or a desire for excessive admiration.
That is definitely something that, at least at the time, characterized who he was.
Can you give examples?
Yes. For example, if he found out that somebody said he was a cool person or liked him or whatever, then that person was his best friend and he would seek them out or something. So like, if I wanted to hang out with one of my friends, I'd make sure he would know that they said, oh, he was nice or he was smart or whatever it is that they said.
Ew, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody was obsessed with me, I'd be like, you're weird, get away from me.
Well, yeah, that's why you're not a narcissist. And then, he was a college professor. Mm-hmm. He had a lady boss, and he used to make it seem like she had some special preference for him because he was such a good teacher, stuff like that. And the few times that I got to know her, I mean, yeah, she was nice and all that, but I didn't see that, I don't want to say obsession, but that preference over him, or it's like,
it was all in his head.
Yeah.
Ew, yeah. That screams insecurity.
Well, what can I say?
Okay, another symptom is feeling that certain privileges and special treatment are deserved. Do you have any other examples?
Yes, probably encouraged by his mom, but he thought that I was there to serve him.
Gross.
And one example of that really used to get on my nerves, when you guys were little, we were trying to get ready to go somewhere, and instead of helping out and I'll do the dishes and you go get the kids ready or whatever, oh no, it was just about him. He'd get himself ready and then he'd be sitting down on the couch like, why was I not ready? Why didn't I hurry to, have everything ready so we could go?
Ew, he sounds like a loser.
And then when Enrique was maybe about 6, I would say, so Enrique would be sitting, your brother would be sitting right there with him, and I was like, what is wrong with this picture? What kind of example? How's Enrique gonna grow up thinking that it's okay to treat women like this? And
yeah. I kind of told you this the other day, but you've done such a great job with my brother, and it is so cute the way that he treats women. He's so respectful, which is night and day from the way that dad treats women.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, the expectation to be recognized as superior without achievements. I have a weird example for this. It's just comical. So my parents got divorced when I was 6. We lived in Mexico City with my dad, and then when my parents got divorced, my mom's parents and like the majority of her brothers and sisters all lived in the U.S., so she moved to the U.S. to have support from her family as she was gonna become a single mom and just transition through the divorce. And then my dad ended up being fucking batshit crazy, so he lost his rights to see us. So pretty much I grew up without him at that point, ever since I was 6. So then he would steal our pictures off social media. Like for my college graduation, I put pictures on Facebook, which I invited him, even though I hadn't seen him in 10, 15 years. But I was like, if you want to come, I'd love for you to come. He didn't come because he was like, oh, I'm scared to be around your mother who hates me. So he didn't come, whatever, not surprised. But then he took my pictures and posted them on his Facebook, and his comment was something along the lines of, oh, I'm so proud, I'm such a proud father of all of my kids' achievements. And I was like, what? This man is not my father. Like, this is just weird and creepy. And all these people were commenting like, oh, Professor, I look up to you so much. Like, you've done such a great job with your kids. And he's like eating up, feeding his ego with all of this bizarre recognition. Like, he didn't raise me. He didn't even pay child support. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, that was him at the time.
But it's just funny because of how crazy it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just have to laugh and just let go. But, Yep, everything was about him. There were times when the first few years when he did come visit you guys, and even when we lived together, he almost made it a point and an effort to not participate in y'all's activities and stuff like that. Even when he had the chance and there was really no excuse, but then he would turn around and did, oh, my children.
Yeah, like pretending to be so proud when in reality, like, he didn't even care to go to our dance recitals or anything.
And, he could be proud because you are his children, but he wanted to kind of like take credit for the achievements when he really didn't participate or contribute much. There was not even a listening ear. Like when he called you guys and you tried to tell him about anything, school, whatever, he really didn't care. He kind of changed the subject. He really... It was like a broken record.
It was like the conversation. Oh my God. I could have just like written down the script because it was the same thing. It was like checking off the boxes every time. Like, how are you? How is school? How many friends do you have at school? What are your friends' names? And so then if I would try to elaborate on my life, oh, this happened at school, he would just cut me off and then move on to the next question. It was like just textbook by textbook questions, and then he couldn't ever steer away from the conversation outside of that.
Yeah, and there really was not like interest in y'all's guys' activities. I remember one time when he came, your brother had a Boy Scout activity and he didn't want to participate in that, and I told him all the other kids have their parents there and all that. I go with him all the time. Right now that you're here, this is a great opportunity for you to bond with your son. And so anyway, he gave in, and I thought, oh, he's gonna be there with his son and all. No, he went and dropped him off, left, and then came and picked him up.
But then you're so proud on Facebook.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. A tendency to make personal achievements or talents seem bigger than they are. Do you have any examples of how he ever did that?
What I can remember vaguely is that when we were with his family, the conversation used to kind of center around his work and what great things he did. And I listened to the conversation and I was like, but that's your job. It's...
Like, I would hope that that's what you do.
Yeah.
I would hope you're doing your job.
Yeah.
Okay. Unrealistic demands or expectations of others.
Yeah, one of the things that probably sticks with me and sort of bothered me a lot at the time was when you guys were little, he always wanted me to work. And I've always loved to work. But when y'all were little, my thought process was, if I work, I have 3 babies for whom I would have to pay childcare. So if I'm going to work, it's going to have to be something that not only pays for childcare, but there's a little bit left over. And in order for that to happen, I couldn't get a little, cheapy job. I'd have to get a good job, a management position, something like that, so that it would be worth it. And I knew, knowing how I am about work, I was going to be away from the house a lot, and the demands of the job, whatever they were, and I was like, I don't want to pay for childcare when I want to be the one taking care of you guys, and I don't want to be away from you guys that much. So his unrealistic expectation was that I had to work no matter what. I was like, no. I kind of refused to do that, and I did little things on the side, but that was his unrealistic expectation.
It is crazy. Even my friends now that have kids, when they break it down for me, I'm like, so you're literally going to work just to pay for childcare?
Yeah. And you know, if that's what you want to do, that's okay. But in my case, that's not what I wanted to do. And he wasn't being realistic and saying, okay, that's not what you want to do. I guess, okay, we'll resolve this together. What can we do? It was no. His expectation was totally unrealistic about what he wanted, and there was no other way. It was his way or the highway.
Ugh, gross. Okay, what about feelings of superiority? Do you have any examples for that?
Oh, yes. I have a really good one. He always tried to make some people feel like he was better than anybody. And I have a silly example, but this is how I kind of explain it. This never happened, but this was just kind of like to explain the situation. If I left the shoe in the middle of the room and he tripped over it, it was, my fault, because how could I be so stupid and left a shoe on the floor? Didn't I think, that he could trip over it? And if he had left the shoe in the middle of the room and I tripped over it, it was still my fault, because how could I be so stupid? Didn't I see that the shoe was there in the middle of the floor? Couldn't I pick it up?
Oh, God.
Yeah. So he always had to kind of like put somebody down.
That sounds exhausting.
It was.
The deep-rooted thing is somebody like that is just insecure with themselves.
Yes.
Okay. A tendency to take advantage of others without guilt or remorse. I have a funny example of this one.
Go, and then I'll tell you what I have.
Okay, so whenever you and Dad got divorced, he, didn't really pay child support, maybe once or twice. And then he came to visit us, and we really wanted cell phones. So we're like getting to that age. Mm-hmm. So he was like, okay, I'll open up a phone plan for you guys and I'll pay it every month. But because he was a Mexican citizen, he had to use your social security in order to open it up. So then he paid it that first month and then just left you with the bill.
Yes, that was a lot of fun, but that was his style.
He felt no guilt, no remorse, and to this day, he's still the victim. Like, he never paid child support, never showed up to be a father, did crazy fucked up things like this example, and then he's like, why won't my kids talk to me? I'm so sad. Like, I forgive you for, being crazy, like you're acting out, but I'll be here when you want to come around. It's just comical.
Yeah, even to this day, and I hear this through you, because as you know, I really thankfully don't talk to him anymore, but he thinks that everything's my fault. There's absolutely no responsibility on his part for whatever happened. It takes two to tango, and I wasn't perfect, but you own your part of it. And in his mind, everything that happened was my fault, and even the fact that you guys don't talk to him and all that, it's my fault because I twisted your minds, and I don't know what other crazy things he said, but everything is my fault. There's absolutely no responsibility, no guilt on his part. He did everything perfect, and he was victim of everything I was and everything I did.
I mean, to be fair and honest, neither you or Dad ever taught us how to take accountability, and we'll talk about how you grew from this. So I didn't know how to do that when I entered the adult world, and that was a really hard lesson for me to learn in my first job right out of college. But I was fascinated, and now that's one of the top qualities that I value in life and what I look for in a partner, somebody that has to take accountability. And I just was fascinated by learning how liberating it is. And it's how you solve problems, because, I went into sales, which is customer service. You have to learn how to make people happy, how to give them what they want. And not taking accountability is how you piss people off, and you don't solve anything that way. And so I just was fascinated, even when I would think, oh, it's not my fault, when I would just took accountability anyway and just took complete ownership of my role in sales, It was crazy, everything that happened afterwards. Then I got loyal customers, then I got referrals, then they would bump up to the next level and buy even more expensive products from me. Like, it does so much. So if you can just get over the pride and let go of your ego in order to take accountability and responsibility for your actions, whether like in the moment you think it's your fault or it's not about who's to blame. That's what I mean by letting go of the ego. Just get rid of that story and just take the action to just be responsible and take ownership and make it right, no matter the reason. Life is so much easier that way.
Not only that, and it's not just liberating, you kind of touched on this, but I feel that it is totally empowering, because whenever you stop being a victim, then it gives you the power to say, how can I fix it?
Yeah.
Instead of waiting because I'm a victim, how can somebody come fix this for me? How can I fix it? And you stop wasting all this time trying to figure out, why so-and-so did this and why so-and-so isn't doing anything to fix it or whatever. How can I fix it? You don't depend on anybody. You go out and you fix it. Responsible for your actions. What a novel idea.
Literally. Okay, an inability or unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of others.
Yeah, not only did your dad not acknowledge that he could have hurt somebody else's feelings, but kind of going back to something that we already mentioned, everything was always somebody else's fault. Never his own. It's always somebody else's fault.
That's what I was going to say about it too. We kind of have already said it, but it just goes back to him being the victim. To this day, y'all have been divorced for, I don't even know, at least 20 years, and he never once has acknowledged how he maybe didn't step up to be the father that we wanted him to be, or how he hurt us in the divorce. It's just all about him, how the kids and everybody has screwed him over. Like, the kids have no control in this. Like, what?
Yeah, y'all were children.
Yeah. It all just goes back to him not being able to take accountability, which then in turn he can't acknowledge anybody else's feelings, and it's all about him. So one interesting thing that I found was spotting narcissistic personality traits in a person early on can actually be difficult, because narcissistic behaviors tend to present over time.
Right.
And I do always ask Mom, I'm like, this guy is batshit crazy. What did you ever see in him? And that's her response. She's always like, well, I don't know. He really was great at first. And then it wasn't until we got married that all of a sudden all of this came out. And as I was researching and prepping for this podcast on narcissism, I guess, that is a true thing, because I think they know how to play the game so well and put on the charm in the beginning until they just can't mask it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think happened. I do want to say something. When I was reading over the things that you showed me to prepare, it talks about some kind of hidden signs of low self-esteem that may, kind of what you said, present over time. He did make me feel like I was always at fault, like I said, and I didn't know what I was doing. And
okay, let's just get into it. According to Harvard Medical School instructor and lecturer Dr. Craig Malkin, it can be important to note that the self-important behavior commonly associated with narcissism is most often used as a way to mask incredibly low self-esteem. Covert signs of low self-esteem may present in the form of making you feel uncertain or unsure of yourself. However, I've learned through therapy that everything in life is a mirror. So somebody with a high self-esteem would never settle for that type of behavior. So now looking back at the situation, even before marriage, the girl that you were when you were dating him, can you see how you had low self-esteem, which is why you accepted that type of treatment?
Oh yeah, I can. I definitely do take responsibility for my part in the relationship, because like I said a while ago, it takes two to tango.
How did you have low self-esteem?
Well, I grew up thinking that I wasn't good enough. When I was a little girl, my dad, for whatever reason, I mean, I don't think he meant this, but I wanted to give an opinion or say something, and he told me that no, I was too little. I just couldn't give an opinion. And to
like
me,
you're just a kid.
Yeah, something like that. And that was devastating for me. That made me feel that I was not good enough. And I've heard you say a lot of this about your little brain, or my little me couldn't process it at the time, and it meant that I was not good enough. And to this day, I remember it. So it was something that definitely impacted me big time throughout my life.
Yeah, it's interesting when parents talk to kids that way. They think it's not a big deal because, oh, they're just kids. But the way that the subconscious mind then registers it is, okay, got it, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy of speaking up, which then goes back to what you were saying, how then in your relationship after dad, how the biggest thing you learned from it was having to learn how to speak up. That stems all the way from your childhood and the way that your parents raised you. They disempowered you by making the little comments like that I'm sure grandpa never thought of.
No, and then it was, definitely reinforced throughout my life, because being one of the younger siblings, there was always somebody that took care of me, that did things for me. And I remember being in my early 20s, and one of my older siblings asked me if I would babysit for him. And I was like, what? I mean, I was like, oh, what do I do? I didn't know. And I said no, because I didn't even know what to do. What's a child? I was always taken care of, and that reinforced the fact that I wasn't good enough.
Yeah, so then you felt like not even worthy of being able to care for a kid.
Exactly.
Which is crazy, because babysitting as a teenager is totally common. I did it as a teen.
Totally. And I was shocked that you guys did it. That's a little secret that you didn't know. And I don't know if I've shared this story with you before, but when I first became a mom, the day we left the hospital, I left the hospital, I kid you not, in tears, because I was afraid. I was shocked. What was I going to do? I didn't know how to handle the situation. So it definitely impacts you in everything that you do.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I just want to point out again how the little comments like that you heard from childhood then not only stemmed to early adulthood when it came to a simple job like babysitting, but then also into the marriage that you got yourself into.
Well, yeah, because you attract something that kind of reinforces and becomes a mirror for you about how you feel about yourself. In this case, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't worthy of anything better. And it's funny how things happen, because within that, the way I try to mask it, I thought I was really smart at picking my husband. He was a college professor, and he was smart, and all the good and positive things, only to come realize that I had attracted and selected a partner that was going to be mirroring how I felt that I was not good enough.
Yeah, that's what I've had to learn through life, and what I'm doing now with my manifesting business, how it doesn't matter what shiny thing you want on the reality. Like for you, how you, on paper, dad checked off everything. He's a college professor, he's successful, on paper, he'll make a good husband. But until you take a look inwards and fix all of your deep-rooted subconscious beliefs about yourself, it doesn't matter how hard you want to work out and lose weight. That's why it's so frustrating for people to try a new diet or start a new workout plan, and they're like, I'm gonna give it my all. It doesn't matter how hard you want it. If your subconscious is deeply rooted in the belief that you're not worthy of looking good or feeling good about yourself, then your actions and your behaviors are only going to reinforce that. And so then that's why people then end up being even harder on themselves when they try a new diet or a workout plan, and then they don't end up committing to it because their subconscious is like, oh, we have to self-sabotage this because we believe that we're not worthy enough. Going to the gym, that doesn't really matter. It's not going to be effective until you take a look inward and look at how you feel about yourself. That's the real work.
True statements. I totally identify with that. And that kind of follows on to the next piece of this, where in trying to mask all my unworthiness, so to speak, I became a people pleaser. Definitely. I was a people pleaser. Right here it says people pleasers frequently swallow their feelings and perceive other people's emotions as more important. That's why I kind of always put myself second. That's why I was like, no, I'll be patient. They have to grow and they have to come to the realization on their own and that kind of thing, because I was trying to be nice, please.
I like that you're giving that example because, again, everything we're saying sounds so obvious. Like, oh, obviously, I don't want to be a people pleaser. But the way that we justify things in our mind doesn't come off as obvious as I'm being a people pleaser. Like, it seems very nice of you. Like, oh, well, let's let them grow. Let's give them time to realize it on their own. That doesn't sound at all like a people pleaser. But now the way that you're framing it, obviously it is.
Well, yeah. We have to justify to ourselves why we act or react the way that we do without realizing that it's deeper than that.
Yeah. So the other really interesting thing is, although narcissists and people pleasers act entirely different in relationships, they actually have one thing in common, and they're a lot more similar than people realize. Both of these kinds of personalities are people who grew up with parents who were unable to deal with their feelings. So as you explained about grandpa not really being there for you emotionally, people pleasers frequently swallow their feelings and perceive other people's emotions as more important.
Yep, that was me.
According to Psychology Today, although people pleasers and narcissists are opposites in a relationship, the one thing they may share is a plethora of early experiences with a caregiver who was unable to cope with their emotions. For people pleasers, the experience of being continually shamed, punished, or dismissed because they expressed a feeling that differed from a parent's may have impaired their ability to trust what they feel. Second guessing themselves and ranking other people's feelings before their own is standard. A caregiver who was only able to consider how he or she felt in the attachment relationship may be the reason. So obviously you just gave the example of how grandpa dismissed your feelings and then how that communicates to your subconscious. Another example, according to Psychology Today, is, let's say a 2-year-old is crying in the back of his mom's car because maybe a bee landed on his car seat. Well, his mom is stuck in the front of the car in traffic, so all she sees is that her kid is being a brat, she's getting frustrated, so then she screams at the kid for crying. So now the little boy is not only feeling fear from the bee, now he's feeling shame for expressing his emotions of being fearful. So let's say he just continues to cry, then the mom becomes enraged, and then she starts screaming like, I told you to stop, I don't want to hear another sound. That is when the little kid is starting to realize subconsciously, okay, let's not express our emotions because mom doesn't want that, and that's bad. The opposite can also occur from this. Another type of protection mechanism for a child is narcissism. So rather than the boy trying to like be a people pleaser and please his mom and no longer cry or share his feelings, the opposite could happen. In order to avoid feeling unworthy, then the child could begin to engage in activities that would feed his or her ego. So do you know of any parenting examples of what happened to dad, like how he ended up becoming a narcissist and needing to feed his ego in order to protect his inner child?
I think that his mom used to make distinctions between him and some of his siblings, and unfortunately your dad was on the short end of the stick as far as being less than, and his mom definitely pointed those things out to him, and I think that's what kind of made him feel like he was not worthy.
That's the saddest thing about narcissists. Even watching all the reality TV trash that I love, that I watch all the time, Housewives or Vanderpump Rules, like Tom Sandoval, this guy on Vanderpump Rules, was in a relationship for, I don't know, like 10, 11 years, and then cheated on his girlfriend that he lived with a girl in their friend group. Even CNN started talking about it. And like all of America has trashed him, obviously, because that's trash behavior. You don't treat your girlfriend that way. Right. But the sad thing is I can see the narcissistic tendencies in him. And because of all this research and self-work that I've done in order to heal from the way that dad treated us, I know that this poor guy on TV is actually so sad, and his toxic behavior is really just reinforcing to his inner child, oh, we're not worthy enough, so we have this amazing relationship and now we have to self-sabotage it because we're not deserving of a good relationship. And then look at everything that comes after. Now all of America is like, I hate you. They're even sending him threats, which again is reinforcing the deep sadness that he's carried around with him. This guy's like in his 40s now.
That's sad.
Yeah, and so think about the buildup of the last 40 years of sadness and all the actions that has reinforced to his subconscious mind. So even though it maybe starts as little sadness, like in the back of the car seat when you get yelled at for crying when there's a bee on you, but then as time goes on, by the time that you're 40, you have caused so much toxicity in your life that it just grows and it gets so much worse, and it's just sad.
Yeah, it is sad. I wish that we learned these things sooner so we could have easier, more enjoyable lives. And it doesn't mean to fall on the other victim, woe is me kind of thing, but we really would make our lives much more simpler.
Yeah. And one thing too that I want to encourage people to do if they are in toxic, abusive relationships is there's a fine balance of allowing yourself to cry and acknowledge that you deserve better, that you shouldn't be in that relationship, but also at the same time, in order to grow and be empowered from that and come on the other side of it so that you don't keep putting yourself in toxic situations. Like my mom went from a toxic marriage with my dad to then a toxic relationship of 12 years. So even though she realized I deserve better, I think also then along with that is taking a step back to realize, okay, well, what actions do I play in this? Like I said, take a look inwards. There's something that your subconscious is feeding to you that's allowing you to even be in that situation to begin with, and you have to grow from that too. If not, you're just as bad as the other person involved.
I'm so proud of you.
Okay, so mother.
Yes.
How has this experience shaped your perspective on love, relationships, and self-care moving forward?
Oh gosh, I wish I had known this way before. I would have been much more happier than I've been, and I would have saved myself a lot of stress throughout my life.
And what about your self-care? You obviously are in a healthy relationship now with Daniel.
Yep.
And something had to have happened in your self-care routine or the way that you view yourself, how you talk to yourself internally. What changed in order to allow you to now be in a healthy and successful marriage?
Well, even though I didn't do years of therapy, I did therapy a few times in my life. But most of all, I did read a lot about self-help stuff, and I did a lot of self-reflection and introspection to try to figure it out. At the time, I knew that I had to do something different. I just didn't know exactly what to do. And so all my readings and stuff helped me realize and come to the point that I am right now in thinking that I have to love myself, and I have to tell myself that I love myself in order to believe it and in order to attract things that are aligned better to that self-love in my life.
So a big example of self-love is how in the last 12-year relationship you were in, how you realized, oh, I have to stand up for my beliefs. Can you think of small day-to-day examples? Because it's little everyday habits that then allow you to enter the big life-changing situations like that. But if you're not in the practice of loving yourself in little ways every day, then you're never going to be able to all of a sudden overnight do that big turn where it's like, I've got to speak up.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think for me, one of the big little things that helped me begin to overcome over time my limitations was talking to myself in the mirror. It was hard to look at myself in the eyes and say, Maripaz, I love you, you're worth it, that kind of self-talk. And over time, I was able to believe it and look at myself in the eyes. And it's funny how your life transforms when you really believe in yourself.
That's a really good example. I talk about that in my manifesting course. It sounds silly, like, oh, look in the mirror and talk to yourself every day and tell yourself that you love yourself. Okay, yeah, obviously that's a little weird, but it does the same thing to your subconscious as, think about when you're in a toxic relationship. You could be the most confident girl walking into that relationship, but if your partner is abusive and beats you down every day, maybe comes home stressed out from work and takes out his aggression on you, or could just explicitly be like, you're fat, you've gained weight, you used to be hotter, or whatever, like you're fat, you're ugly, whatever he's saying to you, even though you're super confident in the beginning, after you hear it over and over again, day after day, eventually you start to question yourself and you're like, well, am I crazy? Am I actually as beautiful or whatever as I thought? And then eventually your mind ends up believing it, and then your self-worth is shot down. So it's the same thing with the mirror affirmations. At first, it's going to feel really weird and you're not going to believe it, that you love yourself, because you're not in the habit of doing that. But then eventually, once your mind has heard it so much, then just watch how your subconscious starts to change. And it's very subtle day-to-day actions that you don't realize that are then going from self-hatred to then self-love. And then that's how you get to the big defining life moments where it's like, oh, I've got to speak up for myself, and now I actually can.
Okay, yeah, you really hit on a big point, and you kind of stole my next thought, because one of the other big things that really helped me out, somebody used to tell me, oh, the stories you tell yourself. And I kind of didn't grasp the meaning of that at first, but over time, I really came to understand. And remember, I told you about that TED Talk about the 4 pillars of happiness.
Yeah.
One of the pillars talks about the stories that we tell about ourselves. And you can tell a story about yourself in a positive or a negative way. And so the same situation, it's just how you present it and how you talk about it. And if you make a conscious effort of thinking of what happens to you in a positive way and expressing it that way, that's also reaffirming your self-conscious something either positive or negative that's either going to drag you down over time or is going to help uplift you.
Yeah, one thing I learned in life coaching when you made me do it as a kid is how life is really, it's not even about the reality, like the fact itself. It's just the story that we make of it. And yes, we can all change the story.
We can, because 10% is what happens and 90% is what we make of it, how we interpret it. And that is 100% our choice.
Yeah.
We choose how to look at that one event.
And I know this sounds really frustrating, like when I've been in situations that I hate, it's obviously not an overnight thing to be like, I'm happy, and then I'm going to wake up happy. Like, I know it can be irritating, like, I can't just change the story. But again, little day-to-day practices of you trying to change the story, eventually you will.
And it's not just changing the story. We really decide, and that's 100% our choice, like I said, how we look at things. 10% is the event that happened, and we could say, woe is me, or we can give it a positive spin. And if we work at giving it a positive spin over time, it becomes a daily habit, and instead of seeing the glass half empty, we automatically see the glass half full.
One other thing I'll say about that, it is really funny how many moments I've had in therapy, like with my life coach, where all of a sudden it's like a switch flips in my mind where I'm like, you know, all of a sudden, like, I made the decision to just change my attitude about it. Mm-hmm. So it is that simple, but simple doesn't mean easy, because as simple as it is to just change my perspective, I wouldn't be able to change my perspective every single time had it not been for all the deep-rooted subconscious work that I had to do.
And let me tell you that it could be as easy or as hard as we think it is. Just like the switch flips on you, the more you become aware of that's how things work in life, the more you can kind of like, you know, if you catch yourself having a negative thought or a negative attitude, you can say, oh, I can switch that. I don't have to think about it that way. And it does become a life habit. But the more you say this is super difficult, that's the reality that you're going to kind of create for yourself, a reality of difficulty. Or the more you train your brain to say, I can do this, it's not that hard, I will do it, the easier it becomes.
Yes and no. I understand what you're saying, but I disagree with it because I think it's a form of gaslighting. Because when somebody's not in the habit of doing that, yes, it's easier the more that you do it, just like anything in life. But in the very beginning, when your parents have talked to you in a negative way, and then your subconscious absorbed that message, to then all of a sudden 20, 40 years down the line change the narrative, that's very hard work. So I just don't want to gaslight anybody and frustrate them because it's very frustrating in the beginning.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
What advice would you give to young Maripaz to help her avoid marrying a narcissist?
I would definitely tell little Maripaz, you are beautiful, you are worthy, you are the most beautiful soul, and I love you.
Sweet.
Yes, and I also want to say thank you, Karen, for making me say these things out loud.
Yes, you're welcome. Everybody needs to do this.
Yes.
Okay, and then last question. What message or piece of wisdom would you like to share with others who may be navigating the complexities of divorce from a narcissistic partner?
Well, not only that, but just throughout your life, don't ever give up. And don't let anybody trick you into believing that you're not good enough, because we all are good enough. Do acknowledge and focus on your accomplishments and build your self-esteem from that. And know that there is nothing in life that will bring you down unless you allow it, and just believe in yourself. And most importantly, just let go of things that are not good in your life. Don't blame ever the other person. Acknowledge who you were at the time in a relationship or in a situation, whatever it may be that you're going in your life, and just let it go, because whatever somebody else did, it's not about you, it's about who they are. And if you acknowledge that whoever you were at the time is what attracted that person or that reality into your life, like we said a while ago, that really empowers you to say, you know what, I don't like this anymore, so I can change it. What do I need to do things different and to attract things that align more with who I really am?
Good job, Mother. I think that's great advice. And thank you so much for being vulnerable and taking accountability in your life. I think this is so helpful for people, not for you to just sit here and be the victim and talk about the hardships that you went through life, but how you took ownership of the situation to really turn your life around. I think that's what will help people really make a difference, and then really A, help them feel like they're not alone, but then B, so that they can learn how to actually help themselves. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I really honestly want to thank you also for sharing your book with me and for having the guts to do the work that you did for yourself and for doing the work that you're doing now. I really
you
love
guys. My mom's gonna cry now. Gotta go. See y'all later, Delulu besties. Listen up, Delulu besties. If you want to learn all about manifesting and become a master at attracting anything you want in your life, check out my virtual manifesting masterclass. www.karen-rico.com/shop, or click in the link in the show notes. And if you want to watch me podcast every week, check out my YouTube channel at Balancing the Bullshit, or click on the link in the show notes.